rough agenda. This is now, we have a little bit of an icebreaker, so it's pretty painless. It's just going to like help you get to know each other and encourage you to talk to everyone in the room to really make the most of your evening. Then we'll have the presentations. We're hearing from Lety, who's the best, and I can't wait to hear from her. And then we'll have, plenty of time at the end for Q&A and getting to know each other as well. Okay, fun icebreaker. What's going to happen is that it's going to show you two options on the screen, and I'll read each one out, and just raise your hand, like which one you prefer or are a fan of. So, like burritos or tacos. Who prefers burritos? Who likes tacos? Pretty even. Burritos is the right answer. Morning person or night owl? So when do you... It's oh no! Oh, wow, spoiler alert. Can it go back?
No, screen. Look within.
Next one is morning person or night owl? So who's a morning person? Night owl? Yeah. That's right. I'll see you online at 2 a.m.
Yep.
Cone or cup? So if you get ice cream, who gets it in a cone? Cup? There's no real answer with ice cream, let's be honest. Beach or mountains? Where do you go on vacation? Beach? Mountain? Lety doesn't go. Lety doesn't leave her house.
I don't go on vacation.
Start at one and rise to the other.
Go down.
So this is a fun thing. Turn to someone you haven't spoken to yet and describe your 2018 in 5 words.
In 5 words.
Tumblr died, I was sad.
Lots and lots of work.
Work, porn, agony, photos, nudity. Doesn't say a lot of boobies in my
Engagement, house, cat, Patreon.
Did you make it sound like that? No.
I did watch a little bit of her stream though I don't think you were on it at the time.
I don't know, we had a lot going on.
Yeah. It was
And the
hosted on
last
Flix,
one,
right?
try and find someone you haven't spoken
It seemed like a pretty
to.
poppin' booth.
Maybe describe a challenge that you're facing right now, or something that you'd like maybe some help with, or just something that you're thinking about at the moment.
Social anxiety.
Mandatory fun is over. Hopefully that was interesting, and so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lety Does Stuff. She's the reason this event is happening. She's made our Discord possible. So give a big hand for Lety.
And here I thought it was going to be hard enough without everyone staring at me.
We love you.
Introduction and everything. That was very nice. Thank you. All right, guys. So, if you couldn't tell from my incredible amount of sarcasm and dry humor, I'm very nervous right now. So, a few months ago, Mindy told me that she was thinking of starting these meetups for adult content creators, and asked for my thoughts on it. So I was like, hell yes, we need this. And then she was like, so, it's awesome that you're on board. Do you want to speak at one? And I was like, yeah. But really in my head, I was like, you have no speaking experience whatsoever, so I don't know what the heck you're doing, but I did say yeah. So I actually wrote all this yesterday, and Mindy said to talk about my career, which is a really weird concept for me, if I'm being honest, to just like consider all this a career. I don't know if many of you feel the same, just because it probably is a good portion of all of your livelihoods, but I'm just kind of dumb. And all of this is just so weird to me now. And it all happens so fast. So, I tried my best to write everything down about how I got where I was and why I started what I do and my successes along the way. And I think it gets a little rambly because I kind of wrote it as a timeline, but yeah, that makes the most sense to me. So I swear this makes sense at the end. And I mean, if not, you guys, I have you guys for like 15 minutes or something, so You guys can deal with me, and you guys can tell me how much it sucked out.
We love you.
Yeah.
Already? Thank you.
Doesn't take much.
Alright guys, so I guess it all started in fall 2011. I am a big fan of comics and superheroes and stuff, and it wasn't always like that. I have to say that most of my interest started when Avengers was going to come out. It came out in 2012, so it was the summer basically after this, but in the fall of 2011, I was on stuff like 4chan and places like Co, and you know, I was just there, you know, seeing how people talked about Avengers and Marvel and stuff and how cool the movie was going to be, and that was just kind of the community that I was in. And you know, it was around this time that I found this thread talking about Attack of the Show. For those of you that don't know, it's basically a talk show type thing with like video games and pop culture and stuff like that. I don't remember what the first video I saw was, but I know that it was Avengers related. But anyway, I remember being interested in the show and looking around and seeing Olivia Munn and Sarah Underwood, and there are these two, you know, amazingly beautiful women that are just actresses, you know, and they're talking about video games and Reddit and, you know, nerdy shit. So I thought that was really cool, because growing up, those were the things I was into, but not really what like the popular girls were into. So yeah, some were like into like Doctor Who and other mainstream stuff, but seeing these two chicks talk about really like niche pop culture stuff and look like they're having the time of their lives doing it, that was like the biggest thing ever for me. Little nerdy tomboy me, but you know, it was the first time that I was really like, oh, you can be into video games and comics and movies and memes and stuff, and you can still be a woman. And it was the first real moment where I was just like, I'm gonna do that one day. Maybe like a YouTube or something. I still had no idea then, as I do now, so that's just kind of how my life goes. But yeah, I just knew that I wanted to go and do my thing and talk about the things that I love. So skip to June 2015, which is 3 years later, and I was 18 and working my first, you know, real full-time job. It was a pretty big position for me. Before that, I was working at like a Japanese specialty store in the fish department. I was basically in charge of managing the fish department. So yeah, I am trained in like traditional Japanese fish preparation, if that's impressive today. So I basically became the manager unofficially, because the real manager was like this older Japanese dude whose English wasn't as good, like he was kind of low-key lazy, and just wanted me to do stuff for him, but he would use the excuse that I do it better and faster, so yeah. And I picked up Japanese quick, since it was like an immersive environment. So basically one day, one of my regulars comes in to buy fish and sees me talking to like 3 people at once, and I'm like switching between 3 different languages, and it was really crazy. If you guys want to know how crazy the fish department gets at your supermarket. But anyway, so basically she just comes over and like talks to me about what I was doing in life and what I do for work, and off the spot like offered me to go work for her for like $18 an hour with benefits for her international shipping firm instead. So basically I was working right beneath her, kind of like as her speaker, talking to all these like companies and stuff on her behalf, because she was Chinese, and although she went to school here, like her English and her accent weren't really great, so I would be the one kind of directly talking to everyone and making sure that everyone understood and stuff like that. But yeah, I would mostly handle the Spanish and Japanese for the clients as well. But anyway, I still know all the shipping company numbers and international shipping lines and stuff off the top of my head. It was a stressful job. Honestly, it kind of sucked. But yeah, I worked 40 hours a week, and on average, that was basically it. I got good pay, and like I said, I got benefits and stuff, and I made more than like most people I knew. But I also had to like drop out of college for it, and it was like the most stressful and like soul-crushing thing I probably had to do up to that point. So a year later I quit. And I had a very comfortable savings of like $20-somewhat thousand to pursue my childhood dream of opening a restaurant, which has 100% nothing to do with what I do now or what I had done up to that point. So yeah, I'm basically winging it through life for the most part. I think I already said that a whole bunch of times, but you guys get it. There's a lot of this. But anyway, cut to a year or so later, November 2016, I was working at Applebee's of all places. I'm comfortable saying that because there's like a million Applebee's, and Applebee's kind of sucks. But I wanted to learn all the rules of the restaurant. You know, if I'm gonna open my own restaurant, I might as well know what the heck I need to do and what it is I'm doing. I just kind of come up with my end goal first, and then I figure out the process to get there later. That's not a very good way to live life, but that's how I do it. So anyway, I started as a hostess, and I worked my way up, and eventually I was a server at a really popular restaurant here in LA. That one I'm not going to mention because it's a major chain, and it's not a major chain. I don't want anyone figuring out where I worked, and they treated me well, so I like that place. But yeah, Applebee's hired me on the spot with absolutely no industry-related references, and I learned a lot about customer service there and the inner workings of a restaurant there. But yeah, it sucked. Like a lot. But anyway, they barely gave me any hours because I was new. It was okay though, because I was kind of like relying on my cushiony savings. So it wasn't like that big of a deal, but it was the first time in my adult life that I really had any free time. So I was just like, you know what, the restaurant dream thing is kind of like underway already. Let's like work on the more YouTube/media thing. So yeah, in November of 2016, I started my YouTube channel, which was all Pokemon related stuff. If you guys want to go look that up. But I suggest you don't. Unless you want to. I don't know. Don't tell me. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, man. But anyway, I love Pokemon. And I also started my Patreon. And then my photo sets were not erotic then. They were just stupid, cutesy little photo sets. I had zero idea, you know, what to do with these or where I was going, besides I knew that it was going to grow from there. And I named myself pretty generically Lety Does Stuff, because, like I said, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with my life, so I just knew that there was going to be more for me to do. So, yeah. Leaving that open so I'm never wrong, I guess, is what I decided to do. But anyway, I'm not going to get much into the YouTube side of things, but with regards to Patreon, well, my problem with my Patreon was that nobody knew who I was. That's probably how we all started off, but yeah, I also had zero social media following before that. I had no pledges except for my boyfriend, who I had to very, very nicely ask him to do, and even then he was hesitant on it, and it was kind of soul-crushing as well. Because I remember putting like $5 bills in like envelopes along with like my Patreon link, and just kind of going around to my coworkers and awkwardly being like, "Can you please do this for me? You don't have to do anything else for me, but can you please do this for me?" They didn't. So I was just like, "Can you please pledge my Patreon campaign? Here's some money to start. And if you like it, you know, you can continue supporting me. Help me do this. It'll be great." And a bunch of them, they actually did say yeah, but then they didn't do it. So I lost like $45 that day. Because one guy out of the 9 actually did do it, like 2 months later. So yeah, I remember my first like real patrons, and you know, they eventually found me through like my fledgling Pokemon Let's Plays, Kyle and Jonathan, and they were like super important to me because they were there for a while. Like Jonathan pledged right up until I think a few months ago, like 2 And then he said he had other stuff in life come up, and you know. And then Kyle is actually still pledged to me to this day, and we talk every so often. And I even asked him, you know, right before coming here, if it was okay to like name drop him and stuff, just because he's such an important figure in the history of my campaign. But anyway, skip ahead to May 2017. It was a few months later that my Patreon campaign started picking up more steam, and I never really considered myself like any degree of girly until I started Lety Does Stuff. I was a tomboy through high school and college, and I dressed professionally for work after that. But it was around the summer that I started going, okay, I want to do more girly stuff. And I started showing off like cutesy little decorations in my room and trying on different outfits and swimsuits over on my YouTube channel. And around this time, my Patreon grew from making like $300 a month to making over $1,000 a month. And I was like, holy shit, you know? Because that's a lot of money. And I come from a family where basically like everyone works manual labor or like low-level jobs. And through my Patreon alone, I was making more money than my mom and almost like everyone else that I knew on that alone. And part of me was just like, you know, I got a bunch of comments of people being like, you know, look at this thought, selling her body, dressing up on the internet for views, calling me a sellout, you know. But like, I didn't feel like a sellout. I mean, this had always been something that I wanted to do. It was still me. And girling up and playing model was something that I've always wanted to do since seeing Sarah Underwood do it all those years ago. Now maybe there's something to be said about like a major role in my life being a Playmate of the Month, but even then, still. My entire life has basically just been like wish fulfillment, doing as much of what I want as often as possible. And as much as what I love as possible, of course. And this was just like an extension of that, me doing the wish fulfillment in my life. But it was around this time that I started being a little more risk with my Patreon modeling. Something I've always wanted to do since the beginning, because actually I did take some new photos during the very first photo shoot that I shot. I just didn't release them until Patron Appreciation Day this year, because I worked at a major restaurant chain, you know. I didn't think corporate would appreciate it that much. And I didn't want to risk my job, so yeah, there was that. I don't have to worry about that now. But yeah, it was the first time ever that I was like, holy shit, there's this like far off alternate reality where I just like do this for a living. So basically, September 2017, a few months after like my first little uptick, my Patreon campaign stayed roughly the same. I was making about $1,500 a month after all the people coming and going, you know. People kept asking me to do more modeling wise, but I couldn't because, you know, I didn't want to lose my normie day job and be left without a cushion. I basically burnt through like all my office savings at that point, so I kind of jokingly set a goal of $7,500 a month, which would be about how much it costs for me to keep making my photo sets and to rent my own place here in LA. So I was renting a room back then, by the way, plus 50%. So if I hit that goal, I'd start doing erotic full-on modeling photo shoots. But honestly, it was kind of not a joke, but I didn't really expect to hit that goal, you know? Kind of goes back to how I gave everyone $45 and no one talked to me after. But it was just kind of me saying that I was like down to do it and committing myself to it like someday without giving myself a hard like set date. But yeah. Skip over to June 2018, just a few months ago. You know, nothing super interesting happened for like over a year. I kind of just did my own thing. I didn't really change up what I was doing much at all. But in June, that's where my life kind of changed, because I started streaming on Plexstorm, which was then, well, I guess it still is now, it's a very new streaming service focused on live streaming without censorship. Basically, their whole message is adult content is welcome as long as you're not doing anything outright illegal. You're not going to be, you know, heavily monitored, like Twitch and YouTube. And that was an amazing message for me because, you know, I had no intention of like taking my clothes off on stream because it's way too cold in my room for that. But I did have like a lot of adult games that I wanted to play. I didn't mention it earlier, but I've loved erotic art and games since a very young age. I don't want to say how young because, you know, laws and stuff. So, let's just safely say it is exactly the very second that I turned 18. Okay. But I couldn't play those games anywhere and share my passion for it because it's banned everywhere. And it's not banned on Storm. So I signed up and played my favorite game ever, which is House Party. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
No, you don't know what House Party is. Okay. Does anyone know what that is? I really hope some people know what that is. Thank you. Okay. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's basically a 3D simulator game where you're at a party and you're going around just trying to bang everyone, and it's just like, well, it's not just sex. It's legitimately like a fun and like really stupid game. Okay, it's not really stupid. Kind of stupid. I'm not insulting the game. It's hilarious. It's great. I guess that's what people say about me, huh? It's okay. I understand it now. But anyway, I actually found out about them like years before when they were still like promoting it on like random forums and stuff and like giving it away for free and just asking people to play their game, check it out, stuff like that. So when I turned 18, I pledged their Patreon campaign, and it was actually one of the first 100 patrons that they had. And then recently it's become this like viral thing because PewDiePie has played it and the Game Grumps have played it, and you know, people on the internet know what it is, and it's now this like multi-million-dollar company. But the game's also like changed a lot. They took a lot of the elements out. Yeah, you used to be able to accidentally like kill someone. You can't do that anymore. It's not like the original. So I still actually had that file, the original file. I kept it. So it was like version 0.2.3 or something like that. Now they're on version 14 if you want to know the difference between how long ago that was published. So I live streamed that on Plexstorm, and my stream was like super popular, and everyone was just like, what the heck is that House Party? Because, you know, everyone else had been playing the newer versions. They know that version. So I show up with this one and everyone's thinking it's a bootleg thing. I'm just like, okay. But everyone was super interested in it. And I live streamed that, and people were just like, it doesn't look like it. But it was also like so amazing to see that so many people like showed up and interacted with me and showed interest in that. So I was like, wow, this was super fun. And, you know, it was a good day, and I went to sleep and everything was cool. But then I woke up and basically I got an email saying, hi, I'm Bobby, creator of House Party, and I saw that you were streaming some super old version of my game. And just want to tell you, you know, we improved a lot. Here's a free copy if you want to check it out. And I was just like, holy fucking shit. The dev of like my favorite game in the universe is talking to me. Not only has he noticed me, he decided to like message me and be like, hey, in case we never updated it, we did update it. But anyway, I'm just gonna fast forward a little through things here. But basically I was just like, no need, dude, you know, I've been your patron forever. I have every version of the game. I'm your biggest fan. I just decided to stream that one on Plexstorm. And I showed him all my little like Patreon emails and notifications and stuff from like when you make a post, you get the email updates. And that went back like 2 years. So he was like, oh shit, that's super cool. And then he saw that I had a Patreon. So he actually promoted my thing to all of his followers, and then he promoted my next live stream. So I was like, wow, so many people showed up to my first live stream of this game. And then I like shit my pants when like double the amount, triple the amount came the next live stream. And I was like, oh my God. And then that's when my Patreon really took off. June 2018. Yeah, specifically June 22nd, 2018. You can literally see the change. It's pretty drastic. And people like attribute it to more like swimsuit and fashion stuff that I was doing that past summer. But yeah, on June 22nd, that's when I did my house party live stream. And my Patreon campaign started growing like crazy, doubling to like 3,000 a month. I don't know why I tried making that into something. It's not. It's 3,000. But yeah, Bobby and I, we're cool now. You know, I'm not weird around him anymore. But I talked to him, and he's like one of my closest friends in a mentor kind of way. You know, he told me about his ups and downs as an adult content creator, and that really helped me be like more confident in myself to go like talk to people that I personally consider like celebrities. So then I hit up Tracy Scoffs almost immediately after, who's one of my favorite comic publishers and another Patreon creator who does these adult porn parody comics. And she was actually the first campaign that I had pledged to in January, and she was like asking anyone if they wanted to be her co-writer, because she's written over 100 issues at that point and was basically looking for like a new voice for some input, you know, stuff like that. So I hit her up, taking Bobby's advice to grow a pair and go talk to people, which I guess I'm not taking today. But yeah, I'm basically her like partner in crime, publishing Tracyverse comics now. So I never would have hit her up if Bobby hadn't told me to, if he hadn't been like so cool and like accessible for me to talk to. So that's from the two of them, you know, liking my work and like promoting my Patreon that it grew so much that these guys believed in me, I guess, and that was pretty cool of them. So yeah, it basically grew to 5,000 a month, and that was just a little ways off of my 7,500 goal. And then from there, it just like skyrocketed, and then it peaked to $13,000 a month in September of 2018. It's averaged down a bit since then. Right now, at the end of the month, I usually pull in about 9K in patronage, and I think in total I pull in about 12,000 each month. So just kind of diversifying what I do. But since then, you know, I'm going to be in house party soon. That's fun. I've also worked with Bobby and Eek, and we might be doing, you know, my game someday. And then part of my rewards now are also Tracyverse comics that I co-write in. So, you know, eventually my Patreon campaign will get more generic, just like my name. But that kind of goes along with it. So it's like not just photo sets, it's more like other adult stuff. But anyway, that's the point. Just doing what you're passionate in, I guess. And that's how I found my success, I would say. Just, if you can say it's like, oh, it's all house party, or oh, it's all Bobby, that they're how I got popular. But I mean, the guy was like a computer engineer and musician until he started his Patreon campaign. And now he has his own company. So, and then, I mean, Tracy worked a job in media management type stuff, and now she's become a hentai sensation. So I guess the important thing here is that they saw what I did and they liked it and they shared it, even if it wasn't in the same industry as them. So they just wanted to be associated with that. But anyway, yeah, I got a little rambly at the end. Like I said, this is my first time speaking, and I might be kind of drunk right now. But anyway, the important thing is I can really attribute my career to passion and probably stupidity. Just kind of doing what you love, you know? Even if it's kind of taboo and kind of like out there, and recognizing that passion inspires others and inspiring others as well. So just being accessible to others and just helping each other along the way, and that's why we're here. So that's why I was super excited to work with Mindy and getting these adult meetups going and getting the Patreon community Discord server set up also with the adult creators in mind. So I guess it's about being an active member of the creator community and just helping others where you can, and that's why I'm really happy that I see so many people here today. And I hope events like this, specific adult content creators or not, happen more in the future, and that there are more new faces to see each time. And yeah, that's basically it.
Here's my whole life story for you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Lety. It was so interesting, and I love the message at the end of just getting out there and talking to people and being advocates for each other, because the work that you're doing is having such an impact on people that you'll never meet and never know, but it is, and it's making a difference. So yeah, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm really glad you did it. Thank you.
Hello, as Mindy said, I'm Jacqueline Hart. I'm going to look at the screen a little bit so that I don't forget what I'm saying, so I apologize in advance for that. So, next slide, please. The first thing that we wanted to come here and say is, what you do is art. I know that there have been a lot of things happening in this past year, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to come out and talk to you. We don't have a big trust and safety announcement, we just want to come and affirm our commitment to this group. Next slide. Yay! So yes, we want to support you. We care deeply about embracing 18+ content, and that's why my team is here, is to have guidelines to make sure that everybody's operating within the guidelines, so that if there are people, bad actors that are causing trouble and making your group unsafe, that we're there to make sure that that does not happen. So we get a lot of questions, common questions, and so I figured I would run through some of these common questions and scenarios of things that fall outside of guidelines to get us talking, I guess. So some of the common things that fall outside of guidelines: offering sexual services on your Patreon page. Raffles is another one, and so I'll specify on raffles. You can give all of your patrons in a certain tier something. So we have heard of people that say, you know what, I have this tier, and there are allowed 10 patrons, and I can give 10 things to those 10 patrons. It just can't be a chance, because if it's a chance of winning something, then that's gambling. And so that's the only reason that we say no raffles. You can give the same thing to all of your patrons. You can give things to your patrons. Just make sure that everybody gets something, not just a chance at something. Cam sessions are another one. Anything non-consensual. Sending personal undergarments, and sexting as a reward. I know there's some laughs, but these are all real. So, nudity is allowed. I just want to make sure that we say that right here. So, we have clear guidelines for things that are not allowed. So, suitable for 18+, posts that contain 18+ content must be marked as patron only. But nudity of real people is allowed, animated nudity, animated adult content, real people fetish, animated fetish, sexually gratifying audio, erotic fiction, and erotica. All those things are allowed on Patreon, so please do those things. Not allowed at all, completely outside of guidelines. Some of these pertain to this group, some of these are just general. Containing pornography, glorification of sexual violence, harmful/illegal activities, hate speech, bullying and harassment, copyright infringement, and money laundering. So those are places to stay away from. So the reform process. This is another thing that we receive quite a lot of questions about. We're proud of our reform process, because if there is something on your page that's outside of guidelines, we will work with you to bring it within guidelines. So it's not that we want to get rid of people on Patreon, we want to make sure that you're within the guidelines. So we've had some people where we say, look, it's these 5 things, please take them down. They take the 5 things down, we move on. We try to make sure that we do it very quickly, so that it's before a payment cycle. And the other thing, I can't remember if I have it later in the slides, but a human always touches your page. So there's no automated system that's going to find some sort of a keyword or a picture and take it down. It's an actual human. And so there's an actual human who will also interact with you if there is a problem with your page, to bring it back within guidelines. So we want this to be a very high-touch human process.
I just want to add to
Yeah.
the vast majority of people that Jacqueline's team works with remain on the platform. This is not about pushing people off, it's about working with you to make certain that everything is within the guidelines.
Thank you for that, Carla. Yes. And the other thing is I know that we've received a lot of questions about an appeals process. And the thing is, if you say, you know what, I hate Patreon, I don't want to go through your reform process, and then in 6 months you say, I changed my mind, that's fine. That's fine too. You can always appeal if there's something that we've had a disagreement about, you don't want to appeal, you can change your mind. So yes, we like to have a lot of back and forth. We want to have a relationship with you. You can always reach out and ask us for help. So I think I have a later slide here, but if you reach out to guidelines@patreon.com, you'll interact with my team directly. So yeah, nothing taken down by machine, and context is everything. So we, again, have humans that review things so that it's not a situation where there's something specific that is taken down by a machine. We look at it, we try to figure out what you were trying to do in whatever it was of your art, and we try to work with you in those situations. Context is everything, one more time. And then there it is, guidelines@patreon.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here for you. Of course, if you have a creator care or creator success representative, work with them too, because they're probably much better equipped at coming to trust and safety and getting you answers as well. Any questions? Yes.
So I'm a part of the adult game community, and I know something that's common is, we have a couple of Discord communities, and something that keeps happening is there's a type of fear-mongering that pops up every now and then where people get in their heads for some reason that Patreon's gonna not allow us in the future, or that we're gonna be persecuted. How do you guys respond or react, and how do you guys feel about that kind of misinformation that constantly kind of gets spread around? Have you guys seen or experienced any of that?
Yeah. We hate it. And that's one of the reasons that we're having this event. This is one of the reasons we wanted to come and interact and talk with you. We don't have some thing to tell you that's terrible. We're not trying to get rid of this content. We're trying to double down and say that, yes, we want to support you. Just read our guidelines, be familiar with our guidelines, and even if you step outside of guidelines, there's ways to come back. So we want to make sure that we say, yes, we want to embrace you. So please tell your friends. We're not trying to get rid of you, and if you have questions, reach out to guidelines@patreon.com.
Oh, nice.
Other questions? Jeez, cold room. I thought it was wrong.
We'll fix that.
Thank you, everyone.
It's all good.
I like this a little bit better. Hello, my name is Anna. I am the dedicated team member who's working with 18+ content creators at Patreon, and this is my team. We're pretty awesome. In the front is Tracy, then we've got Cassidy, Laura, and myself, and the 4 of us are the dedicated team. It's only about 4 months old now, that is actually working with creators on Patreon. The reason that we exist is actually because there's so many things about membership that our company does not know. And so it's my job to work across product with my colleagues in research, marketing, trust and safety, security. I try to be everyone's friend. It's a lot of pressure. I think I'm doing a good job. But as we all work together and cross-collaborate, we get this dialogue going along so that I can offer the kinds of support programs that actually help you be a savvier business person, stay in the guidelines, feel informed, and also get the most bang out of your Patreon page, which is fantastic. So we have a bunch of things that we're working on. All of this is new, and we really love your feedback. So something that I put together today is a handout. You're all welcome to take it. It's a huge list of resources, email addresses. It's got Trust and Safety's contact information. And it also has a really nice, you saw it in the slide earlier when Jacqueline was presenting, little 2-column, what's allowed on the platform, what isn't. So my job, there's only one of me, is to be a huge advocate for things like clarity, understanding, and essentially using our product the best way you can, because you're all professionals, and what you do is art. I have immense respect for that. So our team is here for you. Dedicated team members, Cassidy, Laura, and myself all work on different groups or verticals of creators across Patreon. Right now, Laura, who's actually a bluegrass musician, is focusing on music. And then Cassidy, who came over from festival planning and Golden Voice, is actually kind of branching out into podcasting and video creators. So 18+, webcomics, cosplay, basically all of the nerds and the otakus, I want to talk to you, so my people. When I'm not working at Patreon, I'm binging anime at home with my husband and playing Mario Kart. Probably not sober. Okay. So something that I'm also building out are one-on-one consultations to expand your membership. This is immensely important. This is not creator care. This is not a paid service. This is something that I am doing to emulate my colleague Cassidy's work with other verticals, which is we pick a time. We find an hour. We go through your page. We talk about what's working for you, what isn't. Super sensitive to things like pronouns, anonymity, and also, as you pointed out with your question previously, I'm so sorry I don't know your name, there is a lot of fear, and it's something that as an internet user and a millennial makes me really sad. So it's also my job to bring empathy to every conversation we have and know that most people, even though I'm not intimidating, are afraid to talk to me because they're afraid that I'm, a fast track to an account review. So part of us explaining that this is a human process, this is informed. The more our teams are empowered to collaborate and work together, the better it is for all creators. And we want you here. 18 Plus Community Forum. So 18 Plus has its own home in our community forum as well as in live stream workshops. I've only offered 2 of those so far. Jacqueline has been extremely kind in tag teaming with me and answering a lot of the hard-hitting policy questions that come up. But these are things that I want to offer more of. A way that I am signaling to you in our live stream programming that it's a safe space for you to ask questions related to your craft, like, hey, can you take a look at this, photo set I did? Is the context okay? Or, if you have questions about different benefits you want to offer that you're like, everyone's so creative, it's amazing. Like, tell me the weirdest benefit you're offering. I want to just keep a running log of those for my own knowledge as well. So in the live streams, it'll actually say for 18 plus creators. And we had some feedback where folks very rightly said, hey, a lot of the screenshotted accounts you're showing and the data you're using aren't me. It's not actually an 18 plus creator. You're showing best practice benefits from a totally safe for work podcaster. That's a problem I'm actively trying to solve. And that's where me coming to these events and actually meeting with you is hugely important. So the best way to get a consultation with me is to talk to me and then snag my email address. You can also come through our team email, which is creatorsuccess@patreon.com. And the more that you talk to me and tell me what's working or what isn't working, the more I can go to my team and actually build really compelling programming that speaks to things like cosplaying best practices, or how many live streams can I be on at one time? Or is this game something that would work better on Twitch or Patreon, ad revenue, all those things. So, next slide would be great. So, best practices you can try today. Now, these seem really straightforward, but they're highly nuanced, and I'm going to break these down real quick. So, the first one is charge up front. The ability to charge up front is strategic for 18 plus creators. A ton of feedback that I've had, and I've only been in our company for about 6 months. But something that I've been challenging myself to do is work with Vanessa and our UX team, research, and also calling all of my cosplaying friends who are in fetish and doing this for a living too, and just asking them casually questions about what makes it easier to run your business? Who do you like working with? Who do you find it valuable to collaborate with? These kinds of things. So charge up front is really strategic in that because of the way Safe Search is organized now, I'm sure everyone's aware you have to have sort of all ages appropriate content on your public facing page. You also don't show up in search. So because your patrons they have lots of interests, and some might say they could have a short attention span, you might have noticed I've talked to a few people tonight. I've asked you specifically about churn. It's because 18 plus creators do have a higher rate of churn. However, you also have a higher rate of repatronage, and your patrons pay more. They pay more than most patrons. I believe it's around $12 is the average monthly. So even if people are coming and going, something that I'm also trying to break into is understanding why patrons churn, how we can prevent that, and if there's any ways to shake that up and try that. So with charge up front, essentially what you're doing is you're saying, okay, if you're going to become a patron, you can pay now, and then you'll be on a monthly cadence. This is great for a few reasons. One is that because you don't appear in Safe Search, people are less likely to come and find you later. And in fact, in an older survey we have, around 76% of the patrons that we surveyed said that the only reason that they found the creator was because the creator was talking about Patreon. That's one of the reasons why all your social media channels work. We don't want you to put all of your eggs in the one basket of Patreon. It should be a complement to things like your ad revenue, if you have monetized videos, to Twitch streams, etc. So talk about Patreon as much as you can. And then when your patrons get there, having charge up front enabled helps capture that moment where they're like support motivated, they're excited to see what's behind the curtain, what amazing cosplay you've made, and then they can pay right there. So that's one strategic thing I would highly advise for you to check out. And if you're curious about how to actually implement that, that's a really great reason to come and have a consultation with me. Charge monthly. Charging monthly is great because every other bill that we pay in our life, don't worry, Vanessa, it's all good. There's my, oh, okay, it's fine. It's all good. So charging monthly, we want you to have a stable income. The professionals that I've talked to in modeling and all my friends who work in like circus and the gig economy in general, having stable income is life-changing. It can be, as Lety was saying, a way to get more stable housing. It can open up different collaborations and career paths to you. So I would not underestimate the value of that. There's also so many folks who are doing pay per photo set or pay per broadcast. It's a completely valid way of doing membership as well. I'd love to talk to you about this and see if monthly is something that you can implement that would actually help you get more business. Best practices for tiers, we say no more than like 3 to 5, but really it's more about what you have in the tiers. And if you're consistently delivering on expectations that you're setting to your patrons. And a really great way to do that is to get a consultation. We can go through and I'll ask you things like, hey, do you like sending handwritten thank you notes to 500 people in your $5 tier? Everyone's done something like that once where you've overextended yourself with like a physical benefit. Also, things like one-on-one personal live streams can be really intense, particularly if you're a really beautiful, sexy model, and sometimes you get a creeper. I'm happy to talk to you about Discord if you would like to have a chat community instead. So all of these things are things that we're aware of, but if you're looking for a number and that's how your brain works, 3 to 5 tiers is great. A couple reasons for that. In terms of your benefits fulfillment process, makes it a lot easier. You don't have to worry about like 20 columns of things. It's more likely that your patrons will actually convert when they get to your page because there's fewer options. So one sort of anecdote as a Californian, my entire life, you want your menu to be more like In-N-Out and less like Comcast. So no big long esoteric cable list with like a fee. Get your double animal style with fries and a Neapolitan shake. Good? Okay. And then lastly, repeat high conversion benefits. So there are things in your profession that you will really enjoy doing and fulfilling. Sometimes those fulfill really well, and sometimes they don't. So it's definitely a question of balance. What rewards do you like fulfilling? What ones are higher paying? There's all sorts of self-care things that I can talk to you to implement, whether it's limiting the number of people you have on a tier that's really intensive to fulfill. All of those things are super nuanced, and if anything, the more I work with creators in the 18 plus or age-gated community, as we're kind of trying to start to call it, the things that you offer are amazing and creative. I get some of the best ideas. I had a podcaster who in like their $50 tier actually did a text-based adventure, and it started off as a joke. He was like, you enter a room and there's a chest full of my podcast episodes on tape, and what do you do? And people engaged in that, and then he actually uses it as a reward now where you get to do text-based like RPG with him. It has nothing to do with his page. So that kind of creativity is great, and if you've already gone through the community building and you have people who are paying attention and speaking with you, that's something that you can leverage. I don't think it's on here. We can go back though. Maybe one? Yeah. Something that we left off this slide, we get tons of questions about the dollar tier. Quick show of hands, how many people have a $1 tier? Okay, now what if I told you that about 57% of that dollar is what you're taking home? 57 cents.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So if you do the math and do the research and dig into it and have bandwidth to do that, because it's your job. It's not your job. It's my job to find these things for you and tell you about them. We call it surfacing knowledge. Having a dollar tier can actually be detrimental to your business. A best practice that we host for events is typically like if you sell a ticket to something, people apply more value to it. Our boss, Tracy, has really great and nerdy predilection with like behavioral economics and why people do things the way they do. It's one of the reasons I'm so glad to be on the creator success team is we're actually thinking about how patrons think and how you can leverage that to your best benefit. Another reason that we would say specifically to give yourself a raise on the $1 tier is because if you don't appear in Safe Search and you're not charging up front, you have less income protection. So the ideal way to get someone to become a patron is not to offer a lower amount. It's to offer something that makes them go, oh, would I spend $5 on this? Okay. And then if you're charging up front, you've hit them right in the sweet spot of support motivation and benefit motivation because they want to see your photo set because you're gorgeous. And then you can capture that patron traffic as well. Giving yourself a raise off of a $1 tier can be a complex process, but a couple of product features to highlight. You can grandfather, pardon the expression, people who are in your $1 tier, so it doesn't go away. You would just unpublish the $1 tier and then communicate with your patrons. Tell them, hey, I'm going to offer something else. Maybe roll those benefits up into like a $3 or a $5 tier and look into that. The other reason not to have a $1 tier is because would you take a tip jar in real life with what you're doing with your webcomic when you go to a convention and you are presenting your art or speaking on a panel or talking about this? It's not something that even really fits your business. Does anyone have questions about this? Yeah.
So actually, I had a colleague of mine replace his $1 tier with, say, a $2 tier. How do you feel about that? Because it sounds like 3 to 5 is more of a sweet spot that you're kind of pushing for, whereas he's trying to take the $2 tier and turn that into his new $1 tier because of the whole, 50% transactions, whatnot. How is that on this kind of?
Yeah, so the question you're asking is great. Then in terms of having a $2 tier or a 3 or a 5, I'm sure my colleagues can speak to this too. I think Carla is excited to say something.
Yeah, we've done a lot of analysis on what happens when people raise that bottom tier price. Mm-hmm. And there's actually not a lot of degradation in terms of the rate of becoming a patron.
Okay.
So, also think about how people anchor. So if your bottom tier is $1, that goes back to that behavioral economics piece, then people are like, oh, they've got something that's only worth $1. But if you say that bottom tier is worth 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, like that starts to get into that sweet spot. It gives you that opportunity to say that's the least I'm willing to charge someone. Mm-hmm. So think about what you're really offering. I mean, some people still offer a lower tier because maybe their patrons are super price sensitive, but you may just want that to be a recognition tier rather than actually providing any benefits.
Right.
Because you still need to do the analysis of like, are your benefits worth it for that dollar amount? As Anna said, you would be doing 500 handwritten postcards for a $5 tier. No, maybe that belongs higher up. But think about what you're willing to do at that lower dollar. I know, Andrew, you just got rid of yours, right? Yeah, so I don't know if you have anything to share what that was like, if you've seen any big changes as you made the shift.
No, it's just great.
Yeah.
And another reason why consultations are so important, and the same thing with participating on live stream workshops we do, is because all of you have a $1 tier. We don't necessarily know why. We don't know if it converts better. We don't have data to back that is the way you get more patrons. And as a former DBA engineer who now likes being diurnal instead of nocturnal, that was an engineering joke. It's okay. We want to know why these things actually exist, and that way you can make more informed decisions. And also to recap just the great points that Carla just brought up, because I know Lety's recording, having a $1 tier, if you're capturing people who you already know it's hard to get their attention, charge more, because you might not get them again, and if you got them at $1, it's kind of a shucks moment, like you could have had them at $3. Make sense? Yeah.
Is there a process for converting from a per piece or per broadcast to a monthly?
Yes. So to repeat the question, if you are converting from a pay-per-thing model to monthly, there are different things that you need to keep in mind in terms of what level of income you're having, the number of creations you're making, and how that translates into the money that you're actually going to charge people. Because if, for example, you have a $2 tier, you make 3 creations a month, each patron's paying like $6, then you have to think about, okay, how much money on average am I actually getting from each patron, and then price your tiers. That's a great opportunity for a consultation, because I wouldn't want you to make the wrong decision, and I would want to help you walk through that. And another thing, because we're so connected and we're talking to everyone in the org, I'm going to go to my colleagues and ask them if they work with someone similar to you and find a pathway that makes sense. And also because your offerings are all so unique and in this space, we want to make sure that we're helping you with the best practices as much as we can. All right, cool. I think we're almost at the last slide, actually. Oh, yeah.
I have a question. Is there any way you can change the tier price without having to pay the game?
So, great question. The question, again, just to repeat, is there any way you can change the tier price without having to make a new one? The answer is no, and I'll explain exactly why. If you have 10 people who are paying $1, they have legally committed to pay that $1. They've put their payment card information on file. They're going to be billed at whatever cadence you have with that $1. You can't suddenly raise that amount because they didn't actually agree to pay $2. So it has to be consensual, and your patrons need to know exactly what they're paying when they're your patron. So the process would be, and I'm really thinking we need to do this as a live stream specifically for 18+ creators, so love to make that accessible and out there. But essentially you would just hide your $1 tier, let all your patrons know that you're raising your prices, and then they'll continue to go into a group that doesn't receive benefits, but they are still paying, and they're still there, because you also can't tell them to not pay. You can't delete someone's money. You might not have known that. And then hopefully what we can help guide you through is encouraging all those people through direct communication, since you have your patrons' emails and outreach, to have them pledge up to another tier.
So patrons does not have any paper plans that support that change?
So currently, to repeat the question, the product doesn't currently have like a really seamless process for doing what you're talking about. The other reason is, from a product standpoint, it's less about the product at that point and more about you as the creator actually communicating to your fans. Because your fan base is yours, it's unique, and it's not something that I would advise you to just do without actually telling your patrons that that kind of change is happening. Does that make sense? But we're looking into making these things better all the time. So the more we come to these events and talk to people, the more we understand what's important and what is keeping you from being most successful. You're welcome. All right, great. Yeah, question.
In regard to the $1, I have seen on some patrons where people take like a hit personally. They'll reduce their payment down, and they often choose the $1 because they want to still support the creator, but they just can't afford to do it at the tier. So they just reduce it down to the lowest possible one. If you got rid of your $1 tier and made it say $5, do you think that would affect that process? Would they just leave completely?
You're going to have churn, and so the answer is yes, you will have some people that just churn. You will have some people that pledge up, but that's a super personal decision for the patron. Actually, the number one answer we get on the exit survey is patrons churn, and we ask, hey, why aren't you supporting the creator anymore? The number one answer is really vague. It's my financial situation changed. I'm seeing people not. And because of that, it's kind of murky in terms of understanding that. But another thing to just reiterate is that the 18+ creator community does have higher patron churn, but they also have a higher rate of like re-patronage and multi-creator patronage. Something that I personally want to look into in our work is figuring out how 18+ creator patrons churn, and if there's any behaviors that we can discover, studying that we can pass on to you. And then I know we've got a bit of a talk at the end too. We'll get slides out to you along with resources. We have a new brand kit that the Creator Success team can make available to you along with a toolkit. So happy to email that to you as well. One-on-one consultations, you can contact the Creator Success team or me directly, and I'll send you to a link. You can even register anonymously for that if you're not comfortable revealing your Patreon URL until we've talked more. And then at this point, I think I can take it over to Mindy to finish our slides, and then we'll have more Q&A. So if you have questions, please don't be shy. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Anna. I'm going to run through the final bits really quickly because I want to make sure you have enough time to continue talking to us about specific questions and each other. So Vanessa, if you can just like... so I'm just going to talk about some things that we've been working on. We launched Patreon U, which is this whole blog series all about the Patreon 101. So if you really just want to learn the basics about Patreon, about like best practices, some of the things that Anna mentions, we have a whole blog series, as well as some more emotional and mental health things that we've been starting to write content on to make sure they're taking care of yourself and thinking about the bigger picture of a creator. We've also launched this thing called special offers in the last couple of months, which we're really excited about. It's just the ability to be able to offer a limited time benefit. So you could be like, oh, if you join this tier, the next 2 weeks you'll get a sticker or this like special digital recorded song that I made. You'll only get it if you join in those 2 weeks. And we have workshops and a lot of blogs about that. So I think you should, I'd love to see more special offers. And of course, Creator Success is the team's Anna on doing monthly workshops. And yes, me. A lot of community stuff has been coming from Patreon. I'm just really happy again that we've been able to create a forum, a Discord with Lety, do these meetups. I'm training mods right now to make sure that these spaces are run by creators for creators. So you really have those figures in your community of authority and people you can ask questions about, and doing more workshops and just fun events as well. More of those to come. Some things in the product we release charge up front. We help launch a new benefits tracker to make it easier to see which patrons need which benefits, as well as Google Analytics is a great partnership if you really want to deep dive into where your patrons are coming from, why they're clicking. You can do that with Google Analytics. It's a lot. You don't have to if you don't want to. And as well as post improvements. Some exciting things that we're working on the next couple of months. Creator Success have a bunch more workshops coming. They're really, really useful. And mobile app is coming. Yes, I know a lot of people want improvements to the mobile app.
Oh, yes.
Yes, that's like very, very soon coming out, and we're really excited. So please tell us what you think about it and what's still missing. Better site navigation, new dashboard. Maybe you saw your new earnings dashboard where we're adding advice in your dashboard so you can see the actionable insight from the numbers, trying to tie those two things together. And I've got more fun stuff coming up on the community, AMAs, more events, weekly threads, want to really help you meet each other and just be like, hey, I don't know, is Crowdcast good? What are you using for email marketing? You can ask these questions to this community, and these people, these are your peers, they get it. And I've worked at Patreon since June, but I know as a company, in the last 5 years, Patreon's been around. We've been learning a lot, and the incredible thing is that everyone here uses Patreon in a different way. You're all in different mediums, different themes, different genres, even your own careers, as you mentioned. Like you could be starting off, you could be doing it for 5 years, the whole way. I've even been to meetups where there's been like Harry Potter erotica podcasts, and they're both using Patreon like the completely different way. So it's just great to be able to learn with you. And it's something we're still thinking about, and I think the most important thing is that I really have a favor to ask all of you tonight, is if you could join our community spaces, because I really want to make sure this is just the beginning of this relationship and this dialogue, and I want to keep hearing from you about what we're working on and get feedback from you. What's your biggest pain point? What's the one thing that's taking you 5 clicks when you want it to take 1 click, and all of that good stuff. So that's kind of it for this evening. Again, just thank you so much for coming. If you could skip to the end. Vanessa, yes, a question?
Sorry, I just have a couple of quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have anything that... So I just got my 1099 from you guys.
Yes,
and is there anything where you can take a percentage out for taxes throughout the year so that I don't have to give a huge chunk and, sort of panic?
Oh, yeah. That would be nice.
That is something we can... So it was a question about 1099 forms and whether you can elect to have money being taken out so it doesn't come as a big chunk. We have a great legal team at Patreon, and these are the kind of things that I love to ask them. He's actually in our community forum as well. So I don't know the answer to that, I'm going to be honest with you, but he will, and any 1099 questions he can answer for you, and even look into your specific case, because it's like a personal financing thing. I wouldn't be able to help you on that right now, but we can try and look into it and get you the help.
I'm not looking for help. I'm just wondering if there was a way to take out a percentage throughout the year so that I don't have to pay thousands at a certain point or whatever. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I have a feeling it has to do with the fact that you're not a direct employee, so we have to issue a 1099. But what we need to do is we'll follow up and get a more
Very by
precise
state
answer.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably because you're kind of like your own manager, so.
Any other questions?
Can I just ask a question about the mobile app?
Yeah.
Do you know if we're going to be able to put videos on through mobile?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because that's a hard one, having all my photos, like all my videos on my phone, like blogging, and then having to put them on the computer and then upload them to Patreon.
Yeah.
So being able to do that directly on the phone would make it a lot easier.
I know that posting on mobile is one of the things that they are improving on. I don't want to speak incorrectly,
Okay.
but I'll take that down as well, and it's coming up really soon. So I know that's like a very specific thing, is like post improvement on the
You'll
app.
find out.
Yeah, so I'll find out.
Thank you.
One more, yeah.
So with like Arrow like game creators, right? There's this kind of panic that some creators get when they're about to finish a game project because they're about to transition. And I know there's a Japanese equivalent to Patreon where once you finish a product, you can put it on like a marketplace. And then if you were like, you know, early bird tier, if you were backing back then, you still have access to that content. But new patrons are only backing for the next project instead of like an older project. Do you guys have any solution, or have you received any feedback about being able to cater to people that are trying to transition between multiple projects and are trying to figure out how to monetize older projects without just lumping it into, you know, like...
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is something actually that comes in from our legal team.
Okay.
That in terms of more around copyright protection, right? So some creators, and also just for content protection, a lot of creators will say, you have access to my entire back catalog over here. And what we would suggest is like limit that for a certain period of time. And maybe if you really want a super premium tier, you don't store that in a common place that you might see those people files directly. But we might say, while you're my patron, you're going to get access to this stuff for this period of time.
Okay.
And that's it. We're actually, that's one of the things we've been talking with our legal team, Weston, who's kind of like our copyright expert.
Yeah.
I think he and Anna have been, we're working on an actual live stream around that, specifically because this is a question that comes up. But I think it's part of it is just be, you're limited and you're supporting during this time.
Right.
You know, whatever, your back catalog's only available for 3 months or something.
Well, even if not like a marketplace, some sort of way within the system to be able to more clearly delineate those periods of time, right? Because I can imagine for a lot of content creators, us having to kind of communicate that here's this time window, but then this started a couple months ago, like trying to keep that up to date. If there was some sort of like way we could use Patreon where we could kind of have that be clear and consistent across projects, that might be helpful. But yeah, just a question, so I'm glad that...
updates and stuff. It's very confusing.
With the patron relationship manager, it also is tracking those benefits entitlement, what we would call entitlements over time. So say for example, somebody needs to have been a patron for 6 months before they get something. That's the kind of thing you can do there. But I'm going to take a note on that.
Cool, thank you.
I know something I'm thinking about is I actually saw a case study recently about a gamer who had a Patreon and it funded his game so successfully that he didn't need it anymore because the game was selling so well. So I'm like, oh man, like that's amazing, but how can we make sure that we're still supporting people in like the next stage of their career or for their next project? So it is something that we're thinking about, and yeah, thank you for the cards. Okay, it's 7:30. Oh, okay, one more question, final question.
For the podcast, I was talking to our trust and safety expert, who said that normal patrons can't search adult fine, but Lety so glamorously shared with us her networking experience and how networking with other people in this industry is what is going to help a lot of us move forward. But unless you know the specific person's name, how do you find other adult content creators? Like, I'm always looking for people to come on our show.
Join the Discord. Join the Discord, guys.
We now have a Discord and a forum that both have sections for adult content creators on Patreon.
Right.
So that's the answer. You can find people who are on Patreon. Lety's one of the lead mods on that channel. She built it. Every theme has an 18+ version as well as like a general 18+ chat. Same for our forum. So you can find people in your industry and like, digitally do it as a way to like try and encourage these networks and relationship builders so they know what an impact it can have on your career.
lazy follow-up.
Yes.
Can we get the exact address of that? Like
Yes.
Discord?
Or
is it just Discord?
So if you guys have the link, okay, we do have
It's on the handout, and tomorrow I'll send an email out that will have links to everything we've mentioned tonight. So it's on paper, but I'll also email it out so you can just look at that.
Oh, God. I drove around the corner and they're saying it all the way home. And it just keeps coming.
That's just